This is an oil painting created by American artist Catherine Carl in 1905, which took her 9 months to complete. Empress Dowager Cixi was very fond of the painting, and later, she gifted it to President Theodore Roosevelt of the United States. The painting depicts Cixi at 70 years old, just 3 years before her death. At this time, Cixi had already begun preparing her tomb and intended to carry her opulence into her final resting place. Let's continue to explore. In 1908, the Empress Dowager was laid to rest. Not long after, a notebook began circulating among the public called Ayueshuan Biji. According to this notebook, before Cixi was placed in her coffin, the bottom was first lined with a quilt made of gold threads and encrusted with 12,604 large pearls, 85 rubies and sapphires, 2 emeralds, 203 pieces of jade and chrysoprase, along with white jade. On top of that was a silk quilt embroidered with lotus flowers, adorned with 2,400 pearls, weighing 5 fen each. Resting by her head was a jade lotus leaf the size of a bowl, and at her feet was a chrysoprase lotus flower the size of a wash basin. Additionally, there were 2 jade watermelons, each valued at 5 million taels of silver, among countless other rare and priceless treasures. To keep her body in place, every gap in the coffin was filled with pearls and gemstones before the final burial. The treasures inside Cixi's coffin alone were worth over 50 million taels of silver at the time. The author of this notebook was Li Chengwu, the adopted son of Li Lianying. He recorded the details based on his godfather Li Lianying's account. Li Lianying himself was a key figure in the entire burial process of Empress Dowager Cixi. By then, it was the Republican era. The Ministry of Internal Affairs records didn't mention the treasures from the notebook in the Qing treasury or burial records. As a result, most people at the time dismissed it as Li Lianying and Li Chengwu bragging, thinking it wasn't credible. However, someone was about to take real action and prove the authenticity of Ayueshuan Biji. In 1928, 20 years after Empress Dowager Cixi's burial, General Sun Dianying of the National Revolutionary Army used explosives to blast open her tomb. When the soldiers entered, they pried open the outer coffin and then the inner one. Everyone was stunned by the sight. The jewels inside the coffin gleamed so brightly that they outshone the soldiers' torches and flashlights. The tomb was thoroughly looted, and soon after the treasures began appearing on the market. Among them was a phoenix crown adorned with a pearl weighing 4 taels, about the size of an egg. This eastern pearl, from the Songhua and Heilongjiang river regions, was valued at 10 million taels of silver at the time. Remarkably, in 2010, this pearl was auctioned for $134 million, equivalent to about 950 million yuan. There was also a jade lotus flower that Empress Dowager Cixi held, which was valued at 2 million taels of silver at the time. There was another jade lotus flower found on the left side of Cixi's body, along with 3 sections of white jade lotus stems. These stems had natural gray stains and from the nodes with pink lotus flowers blooming on top. On the right side of the body was a jade-carved red coral tree with a small jade bird perched on one of its branches. At the very top of the body and all the treasures was a Dharani Sutra quilt, woven with twisted gold threads. To enhance its flexibility, the quilt also included down from thousands of Tibetan antelopes. The embroidery technique used was the most intricate, reserved for dragon robes and Dharani Sutra quilts. The quilt featured 10 layers of embroidery, with 17,800 characters of Dharani Sutra scriptures and various Buddhist motifs. Experts estimate that it would have taken 10 top embroiderers 10 years to complete. The surface of the quilt was covered with 820 pearls, and a net made of 6,000 pearls was draped over them. Although Sun Dianying's soldiers looted the tomb thoroughly, they didn't recognize the quilt's value and discarded it, taking only the pearls. Experts later determined that this quilt might have been the most valuable item among all the treasures. Today, the Dharani quilt occasionally appears in museums. So far, we've only seen the treasures that appeared on the market. The true extent of the treasures inside the coffin, and the most valuable among them, may only be known to Sun Dianying himself. For instance, there was a luminous pearl held in Cixi's mouth. Sun Dianying claimed that when he extracted 2 pieces of the pearl from her mouth, they appeared to be ordinary gemstones. However, when the 2 pieces were combined, they instantly formed a glowing pearl. This pearl emitted enough light to illuminate an area within 10 steps, allowing one to see even the finest details, like a single strand of hair. Sun Dianying also mentioned that he later gave this luminous pearl to Madame Chiang Kai-shek, also known as Sung Mei Ling. Despite this, the pearl has never been seen in public. Later, scholars calculated that Empress Dowager Cixi's daily living expenses amounted to about 40,000 taels of silver. The battleship Yoshino, which was sold to Japan for 3.5 million taels of silver, was originally custom-built by Britain for the Qing dynasty. However, due to delays in the court's approval of the funds, the ship was sold to Japan. The Yoshino later became a mainstay of the Japanese Navy in the First Sino-Japanese War. When Cixi turned 60, she spent 10 million taels of silver on her birthday celebrations and 30 million taels on renovating the Summer Palace. Building the entire Beiyang fleet also cost around 10 million taels of silver. There is a prevailing notion online that Cixi's extravagance was beyond measure, suggesting that her luxury was not just a personal indulgence, but came at the expense of the entire Qing dynasty. In essence, it is argued that the Qing dynasty itself was her true burial gift. Returning to Empress Dowager Cixi's story, after Sun Dianying blew open her tomb on July 11th, the former Emperor Puyi, living in Tianjin, learned of the incident by August. Sun Dianying had not only opened Cixi's tomb, but also those of Qianlong and Kangxi. At that time, 19-year-old Puyi created a drawing reflecting his outrage over the desecration. More than 40 days after Cixi's body was discarded, a royal named Ixinjueluo Baoxi went to the eastern tombs to recover and rebury her remains. In his diary, Baoxi described finding Cixi's body discarded in a corner of the tomb. Face down with her hair in disarray, her body was covered in white fur, her complexion was pale, her eyes were sunken like black holes, and her lips were torn. She was found with her clothes stripped away, leaving only a pair of underpants and one sock on her lower body. Alright, that's the end of today's story. See you next time.